Director Bong Joon-ho and his lovely interpreter Sharon Choi. Director Bong, first, thank you so much for being back with us today, 5 years after we were fortunate to host your retrospective of your works up to that point. And I think Mickey 17, I have to congratulate you. It's an extraordinary addition to your body of work. It felt timely when I saw it a week ago, and somehow it feels more timely today than it did a week ago. So to start, I wonder if you could tell us a bit about the film's origin story. Following the extraordinary success of Parasite, I know that you were approached with this novel that had not yet been published. It had been optioned for publication. And you were presented with it and invited to consider adapting it. And I wonder if you could start by speaking about what initially drew you to this novel, Mickey 7, as a good starting point for a film, and this film in particular.
이 저기 에드 애시턴 소설의 이제 핵심 컨셉이랄까, 사이파이의 어떤 컨셉이 휴먼 프린팅이었어요. 그래서 그 일단 거기 그것 자체에 이제 좀 흥미를 느꼈는데.
So the core sci-fi concept in Ed Ashton's novel is human printing, and I was just fascinated by that.
일반적인 클론이나 이렇게 복제 인간하고 좀 달라요. 이제 진짜 이렇게 출력되는 거야. 그 종이에 이렇게 우리 서류 출력, 인간이 출력되는 거거든요. 영화 보셨으니까 뭐 아시겠지만.
And human printing is quite different from the cloning and replicant stories that we've seen before, because we're literally printing out human beings as if they're just pieces of paper.
사실 결합되면 안 되는 단어죠. 휴먼하고 프린팅이 이게 인간이 이렇게 출력되면 안 되잖아요. 이미 거기서부터 인간성이 무시되는 건데 거기서부터 이미 어떤 많은 코미디와 또 슬픔이 이미 다 묻어 있지 않을까. 특히나 이제
If you see the word human printing, that concept, it's two words that should never really be combined. We shouldn't really be printing out human beings, and in that concept, we sense how it's just totally denigrating humanity, and I felt that there was a lot of comedy and tragedy in that concept.
근데 저는 또 사악하게 이불하게 이제 로버트 패틴슨을 계속 출력하고 싶었던.
And I decided to be even more evil and print out even more Robert Pattinsons.
프린트되기 좋게 생겼어.
Because he looks so printable.
뭐 억울해 보이지 않아요? 그 배우 보면 약간 불쌍한 억울한 약간 손해 잘 보게 생겼어요.
I mean, he always looks like he probably gets the short end of the stick for everything, and some like unfortunate things happen to him all the time. He just kind of has that look.
It's almost impossible, having seen the film, to imagine it without Robert Pattinson in the lead role. I think it's a really inspired casting choice that plays with his star persona as well as his strengths as an actor. And I wonder if you could speak about at which point you knew that Robert would be your Mickey, and how you knew, and then how you ended up working with him to refine iterations of a single character.
When I 19년도인가 텔루라이드가 when I was in Telluride Film Festival 2019, I met great director Josh Safdie there. We are friends, and at the time it was not Good Times, but 아담 샌들러 영화 뭐였지? 언컷 잼스였는데 그 전 영화 그 저기 굿타임스의 로버트 패틴슨을 보고 되게 반했었어요. 그러니까 저 배우가 저런 느낌도 있구나. 그동안 봐왔던 느낌하고 많이 다르다는 거를 느꼈었고요. 그리고 그때 이미 뭐 데이비드 크로넨버그나 뭐 글레어든이 막 실험적인 영화들을 많이 하고 있더라고요. 그래서 연기 욕심이 또 많이 있구나라는 것도 느꼈었고.
So the Safdie brothers were there for Uncut Gems, but I was able to watch Good Time and was completely enamored by Rob and saw a very different side of him as an actor. And, I knew that he had already worked with great directors like Cronenberg and Claire Denis. He was working on these more arty films, and I could tell that he was quite ambitious as an actor.
그래서 세븐틴을 충분히 잘할 것 같다라는 미키 세븐틴을 잘할 것 같다는 느낌이 처음부터 충분히 있었고, 근데 과연 에이틴도 할 수 있을까라고 궁금했었는데
So I knew that he'd be able to nail 17 from the get-go, and the question was, would he be able to handle Mickey 18?
그때 또 제가 그 라이트하우스를 보게 된 거예요. 그 윌리엄 데퍼랑 하는
And that's when I ended up watching The Lighthouse.
거기 막 폭발을 하더라고요 광기가. 그래서 에이틴도 잘할 수 있겠구나라는 생각이 들었었어요.
And in that film, you just see him explode with madness, and I knew that he'd be able to do 18 as well.
그래서 시나리오 완성할 때 이제 퍼스트 초이스였는데 또 본인도 다행히 너무 좋아하고 싶어 해가지고 되게 순조롭게 진행됐죠. 그래서 되게 랍과 일하게 된 게 되게 행운이었던 것 같아요.
So he was my first choice, even from the screenwriting phase, and thankfully he was also very eager to join this project. So it was quite a smooth process getting him on board. I was very fortunate to have Rob work with me on this.
Returning to the film's timeliness, it feels like a film that's so precisely keyed into our present moment, but that also has a very precise sort of visual logic in its imagining a future and a not entirely appealing future that feels continuous with our present or easy to imagine as coming out of our present. Both in terms of sort of satirizing certain political figures or forces at work in our world today, and also imagining the advances in technology or the limitations in the advances of technology.
I wrote a script on 2021, and I shoot the movie on 2022. 이건 다 정확하게 알고 계셔야 될 거.
You guys should remember that exact fact.
근데 작년에 이제 뉴욕에서 완성된 영화를 마크 러팔로랑 같이 봤어요. 그 워너 브라더스 시사실에서.
But last year, I watched the finished film with Mark Ruffalo in New York at the Warner Brothers screening room.
총알이 핑 지나가는데.
And especially when the bullet just like grazes his cheek on the movie, we were just like, oh my God. Oh, wow. Huh.
아, 근데 이게 무슨 그 베를린 영화제에서도 뭐 이렇게 크리스탈 볼이 방에 있냐 물어본 기자도 있었고 근데 전혀 그런 게 아니었고요.
Yes, some reporter at the Berlin Festival asked me if I had a crystal ball in my room, and no, that's not the case, unfortunately.
사실 저랑 마크가 그 마샬 캐릭터가 영화의 어떤 정치적인 풍자의 핵심이긴 하니까 이제 폴리티컬 세타이어에 딱 그걸 책임지는 인물인데 그래서 이제 여러 실제 정치인들 얘기를 한 건 사실이에요. 근데 다 과거의 정치인들 얘기를 했었거든요. 네.
So Mark Ruffalo's character Marshall is definitely the one carrying out the political satire of this film, and he is an amalgamation of many different politicians, but they're mostly politicians from back in the day.
사실 미국의 어떤 그 주지사, 가버너 얘기를 사진도 보여주면서 마크가 한 적이 있었고 레퍼런스로 저도 한국의 어떤 과거의 선거에서 자꾸 떨어졌던 어떤 분을 과거 정치인인데 그 또 보여주면서 되게 재밌는 캐릭터다라고 얘기했던 것이 있어요. 근데 정확한 건 다 현역 정치인은 아니었고 과거 정치인들이었고요. 그리고 이제 원작 소설에는 토니 걸레트 캐릭터가 없어요. 그걸 제가 만든 캐릭터인데 그건 이제 독재자 캐릭터들이 이렇게 부부로 나왔을 때 나오는 또 그 묘한 재미가 있고 묘한 그 더 공포스럽고 더 코미디 더 웃기기도 하고 뭐 그런 그 느낌이 있거든요. 그래서.
So when we were discussing references, I remember Mark showed me a photo of a particular American governor from back in the day, and I also showed him photos of a particular Korean politician who kept losing all his elections from back in the day. So we did, talk about specific figures, but they were mostly just politicians from the past. And one important thing about the Marshalls is that Toni Collette's character Ilfa doesn't exist in the original novel. I created her because when dictators move as couples, it becomes quite more like eerie. They become more ridiculous, more terrifying, and even funnier when they're in couples.
그래서 과거 인물을 모델로 했는데 그게 자꾸 현재화되는 것 같아요. 이게 역사가 반복이 돼서 그런 건지 그 유럽의 기자분들이랑 얘기할 때 다 본인들 나라, 그러니까 본인들이 겪은 각 나라마다 겪은 그 정치적인 나쁜 경험 같은 거를 다 투사를 시키더라고요. 이렇게 프로젝션 시켜가지고 나는 뭐 이태리에서 왔는데 쟤를 보니까 누가 생각나 다 이런 식이에요. 그래가지고 그만큼 마크가 그 캐릭터를 좀 이렇게 보편화시켜서 잘 표현해낸 것이 아닐까 뭐 그렇게 생각해요.
So we modeled the character based on people from the past, but I think a lot of people see the present in his character, perhaps because history always repeats itself. When we were in Europe screening the film, a lot of people talked about political leaders from their own countries and just started projecting like stressful political memories of their times onto his character. And I think that just goes to show how Mark was able to sort of make this character quite universal and express this archetype of a bad political leader.
Since you mentioned Marshall's wife, played by Toni Collette, I want to ask about the central love story, because I think to the extent that it's a pessimistic film, or a pessimistic vision of a future, that pessimism is countered by the love story at the heart of it between Mickey and Nasha. And I'm curious how you sort of thought about that central thread within the film as it related to sort of larger philosophical questions that the film is asking about community and mortality and power and what it means to have a loving couple at the center of this crisis situation that's helping each other through it.
이제 매번 영화를 직접 시나리오를 썼었는데 이제 돌이켜 보니까 제 영화의 이제 캐릭터들한테 제가 되게 그동안 가혹하게 했었다라는 생각이 자꾸 드는 거예요. 옛 일을 돌이켜 보니까.
So I wrote all my scripts myself, and when I look back on my films, I kind of now think that I was quite harsh to the characters in my own stories.
그래서 이번에 미키는 좀 파괴되지 않았으면 좋겠다라는 생각을 했었는데.
So this time with Mickey, I really didn't want the world to destroy him.
근데 파괴 안 되기가 이제 그 되게 파괴될 수밖에 없을 것 같은 상황이에요. 보니까 둘러싼 상황들이 뭐 휴먼 프린팅에 익스펜더블에 그 마샬 같은 또 독재자가 있고 모든 상황들이 너무 안 좋아서 그럼 누가 얘를 좀 지켜줘야 그나마 얘가 버티고 살 것 같은데 그게 나샤였던 거죠. 그래서 나샤의 존재가 사실 되게 중요할 수밖에 없었고 그냥 멜로드라마의 레이어가 하나 있다. 영화 이게 아니라 그냥 어떻게 보면 영화의 오히려 척추 같은 미키가 파괴되지 않을 수 있는 유일한 방법 같은 거였는데.
But if you look at Mickey's life, it's almost impossible to avoid getting destroyed with the human printer, with being an expendable and having a dictator like Marshall. In order for him to avoid getting destroyed, someone needs to protect him. He needs to rely on someone. And for Mickey, that is Nasha. And so she's a very important character in the film. And it's not that this love story is this additional melodrama love layer. It's really the central spine that holds the story and Mickey's character together.
사실 나샤 캐릭터는 미키의 연인이다. 그 역할에 딱 제한되어 있는 캐릭터 아니잖아요. 사실 그 마샬이나 독재자에 대항하는 어떤 정치적인 비전도 내보여주고 특히 그 크리퍼에 대한 인사이트가 있잖아요. 나샤 때문에 그 크리퍼를 보는 관점이 딱 정반대로 바뀌게 되는 거잖아요.
And Nasha's role in the story isn't just limited to being Mickey's girlfriend. She's the one who fights against Marshall and provides a new political vision, especially with the Creepers. She's the one who provides insight that allows the other characters to, switch their perspective on the Creepers.
그리고 이제 개인적으로 이렇게 되게 개인적인 건데 고함 치는 사람을 좀 찍어보고 싶었었어요 옛날부터.
And this is a very personal detail, but I really wanted to shoot someone just really bellowing and screaming their lungs out.
네, 나샤 덕분에 이번에 소원 성취를 한 것 같아요.
So thanks to Nasha, I got my wish.
This might be a related question, I'm not sure, but I was very struck in the film by how, while we're confronted with these incredibly grand, epic-scaled visions of a future reality, these built environments, these immense spaces that they're moving through, as well as they move through a lot of different spaces, but that element feels secondary almost to the really intimate sensory experiences that keep being referred to, like the smell of shampoo, the taste of sauces, what recreational sex means as opposed to productive sex. And I wonder if that was sort of a conscious consideration, this sort of contrasting of these brutal spaces with the lived humanity of sensory experience.
그 말씀하신 게 사실 영화의 핵심 컨셉 또는 톤 앤 매너라고 볼 수 있을 것 같고요. 네.
I think what you just said sort of describes the main concept and the main tone and manner of this film.
그 에픽이라고 해야 될까? 그런 웅장한 사이파이는 뭐 이미 있잖아요. 듄 같은 아름다운 영화들도 있고. 예.
So we already have these epic, magnificent sci-fi films like Dune.
우리는 그냥 주인공이 왠지 구멍난 양말을 신고 있을 것 같은 그런 분위기를 만드는 게 이 영화의 목표였어요. 사이파이지만 약간 이렇게 뭔가 양말 냄새가 나는 듯한 사이파이.
So my goal was to create a film with characters that probably have like holes in their socks. It's a sci-fi film, but it kind of smells like stinky socks.
그래서 로버트 패틴슨 덕분에 또 그런 느낌이 잘 살기도 했는데 어쨌든 그 뭐 방금 얘기하신 그런 자잘한 디테일들도 그렇고 뭐 예를 들면 뭐 인터갤럭티컬 트랜스퍼 피, 뭐 행성 간소 홍금 수수료 막 이런 얘기 한단 말이에요. 그리고 스티븐 연이 하고 있는 캐릭터도 사실 보통 사이파이 영화에서 볼 수 있는 캐릭터는 아니잖아요, 사실. 예.
And I think Rob really sort of nailed that stinky socks sensibility. And aside from the details you mentioned, we also have the intergalactic transfer fees. They're talking about, little things like that. And also Stephen Yeun's character, Timo, you really don't see characters like that in a sci-fi film.
그래서 이제 마틴 스콜세지의 예를 들어 그 민 스트리트에서 그 주인공들을 갑자기 우주선에 태워버린 것 같은 약간 그런 느낌을 하고 싶었던 건데.
Yeah, so I wanted to go for like a version where it feels like we're taking the characters from Martin Scorsese's Mean Streets and just shoving them all in a spaceship.
그게 영화의 어떻게 보면 주제와도 관련이 있는 것 같아요. 그 되게 휴먼 프린팅이라는 이제 놀라운 테크놀로지도 나오고 먼 행성에 가서 뭐 컬로니제이션을 뭐 식민지도 만들고 하지만 인간은 여전히 찌질하고 여전히 어리석고 같은 실수를 반복할 준비가 돼 있다라는 게 사실 영화의 서브 주제 같은 것이었기 때문에. 예.
And I think that's starkly tied to the theme of this film, where we have this incredible technology of human printing, and we're now going on these outer space colony expeditions, but humans are still just as pathetic, just as foolish, and ready to make the same mistakes. That's one of the key sort of sub-themes of this film.
I wish I could keep going with my own questions, but I want to open it up to the audience. So if you have a question, please raise your hand, and there will be a mic coming around. I see one hand on the aisle there, in a plaid shirt.
Hello.
Congratulations, of course, a brilliant film. I wonder, though, with the success of the Academy Awards making history, whether it was intimidating for you to try to figure out what to do next. You know, the Fellini problem in 8.5. What, you know,
큰 사건이었긴 했죠. 저도 되게 신기했고 물론 이제 좋은 일이었는데 좋은 사건이었는데 근데 제가 뭐 딱히 많이 흥분하거나 뭐 공중으로 붕 뜨거나 그렇지는 않았기 때문에 예.
So it was a big event and it was all very surprising. It was so great what happened. But, you know, it wasn't like I was really like too overly excited about it. It wasn't like I was on cloud 9 and over the moon.
말씀하신 그 8과 2분의 1 오프닝에는 이렇게 붕 떠 있잖아요. 이렇게 발에 줄이 이렇게 왔는데 그런 상태는 아니었고요. 예.
Because you mentioned 8.5. If you remember the opening, we have our main character floating on air with a string attached to his ankle.
Actually, when Quentin Tarantino, when he won the Palme d'Or in Cannes and also won in Oscar, at that time he was just 29 or 30, maybe 31 years old. Yeah. But I was already early 50s when I got Oscar. Very middle-aged guy. Certainly got some award. And 그래서 되게 안정감 있게 쭉 갔어요. 하던 일을 계속 했고요. 그래서 꾸준히 그 후로도 그냥 차분하게 일을 해서 대신 시간이 좀 걸렸지만 미키 세븐틴도 만든 거고 지금 작업하고 있는 애니메이션 프로젝트가 있는데 그것도 기생충 전부터 준비하던 거예요. 2019년 초부터. 그래서 그 작업을 지금 또 계속 하고 있어서 그냥 그 꾸준히 계속 일만 했어요.
So I was quite calm and level-headed throughout that whole process, and I just continued to do what I've always been doing. Even with Mickey 17, it was kind of the same. It took a bit of time, but I just did what I had always done, and I'm working on an animation film now. I've been working on it since early 2019, even before Parasite, and even that process has been kind of the same.
I was a bit surprised to hear Elliott Smith's Twilight in the movie, and just curious how that came about. Are you a big fan of him and his music? And yeah, that's really it.
그 원래 그 뮤지션에 대해서 잘 몰랐다가 그 굿윌 헌팅이라는 영화에서 그 Between the Bar라는 노래가 나와가지고 이게 뭐지? OST에서 들었다가 그때 가수 이름을 처음 알게 됐어요. 그 후에 되게 많이 들었었고요.
So I wasn't really familiar with Elliott Smith, but I heard his song Between the Bar and Good Will Hunting, and I looked him up, and that's when I got to know Elliott Smith.
근데 그 트와일라이트라는 노래 보면 그 16마디가 16번 반복되는 그 간주 사이 간자 간주 부분이 있어요. 띠리리리리 띠리리리리 그 16번이 반복되는데
So if you look at the song Twilight, there's sort of this refrain that repeats 16 times in the song.
처음 들으면 거기서 약간 LP판 판 튀는 걸로 오해하는 분들도 있어요.
Yeah, some people have mistook it as the record player getting jammed and it looping.
근데 그 부분을 어떤 영화의 어떤 상태에 넣고 싶은 생각이 옛날부터 있었거든요. 그러니까 이게 이 영화에서는 여기서는 이제 그게 키스를 할 듯 말 듯한 상황에 그게 나오고 그러는데 또는 그거보다 또 되게 뭔가 텐션이 강해질 때 어쨌든 그 음악의 그 부분을 한번 영화에 써보고 싶은 생각이 옛날부터 있었어요.
And I've always wanted to use that part of the song in a film. And here you see Mickey and Kai like about to kiss. It's like there's this tension of whether or not they're gonna kiss. And I thought this sort of looping section of the song would work great with this scene. It's around 16 times or 12 times or 16 times this repeating. Not sure. Please go check. But yeah.
Hi, I'm wondering if you can talk a bit about Toni Collette's character's obsession with sauces and the meaning behind that.
그 이제 본인 대사에 자기가 그러잖아요. 그 문명의 그 리트머스지 같은 것이다. 그리고 이제 이 행성에 가서 우리가 진짜 식민지를 고차원의 식민지를 건설할 건데 그 기준 같은 것이다라고 막 얘기를 하는데.
You know, Toni Collette's character, she says in the film that sauce is the litmus test of civilization and how sauce is the standard of this high quality colony that they want to establish on this planet.
근데 그 처음 우주선에서 미키가 밥을 먹을 때 보면 이제 그 식판 같은 거에 이렇게 큰 기관총처럼 생긴 거 이렇게 뭐 약간 포리찌 같은 게 나오는데 그 회색에 되게 흉측한 그 일종의 이제 거기 이제 워킹 클래스 사람들이 모여서 밥 먹는 이제 카페테리아 같은 건데 이제 거기 이제 그런 음식을 주는데 이 사람은 소스 얘기를 하고 있는 거죠. 5가지 컬러의 소스를 막 그 접시에 이렇게 해놓고. 예.
In the beginning of the film, when we see Mickey in the spaceship and what he's eating, he has, this very ugly-looking porridge being squeezed out from a gun-looking instrument on this like plastic tray, and it looks so unappetizing and kind of disgusting. And in the cafeteria where all the working class members of the spaceship are at, that's what they're eating. But then we have Toni Collette's character in her fancy room talking about 5 different kinds of sauces.
우리가 그 좋은 훌륭한 셰프 식당에 가면은 불행히도 이렇게 접시는 되게 큰데 그 중간에 조그맣게 음식이 있잖아요. 예, 그리고 가장자리에 소스들이 이렇게 있는데.
You know, when we go to, one of these fancy restaurants with a renowned chef, you get these like ginormous plates with a tiny bit of food at the very center and tiny bits of sauces just around the very minuscule portion of food.
그런 음식을 우주 식민지에서 이제 한번 만들고 싶은 게 어떻게 보면 그 토니 콜레트 캐릭터의 핵심인 건데, 그러니까 그만큼 어떤 문명에 대한 허세 같은 게 있다고 해야 될지. 예.
So Toni Collette's, the core of her character is that she wants to create that kind of dish in this planetary colony, and it kind of shows the pretentiousness of the civilization she.
그리고 원래 행성에 살고 있던 크리퍼들을 아주 심하게 경멸하잖아요. 벌레들이라고 하고 동시에 또 미키 캐릭터도 되게 경멸하죠. 프린트 잡이다, 뭐 스팸 베이비다, 뭐 이러면서 스팸은 절대 재료로 안 쓰겠죠. 그 일파가 요리를 하면. 네.
And she and Marshall treat the creepers with such contempt and disdain, and they treat Mickey exactly the same way. Marshall calls Mickey a spam baby, and Ilfa would never use spam as one of her ingredients.
그래서 경멸받던 두 존재들이 이제 마샬 일파랑 싸워서 이기는 이야기인 것 같아요. 간단히 말하면 미키가 크리퍼를 돕고 크리퍼도 미키를 구해줬잖아요. 그래서 그들이 같이 도와서 이제 마샬 일파를 제껴버리는 얘기죠.
So to put it simply, it's 2 living creatures that were treated with contempt by Marshall and Ilfa, Mickey and the creepers, eventually fighting them and winning against them. The creepers saved Mickey, and Mickey ends up helping the creepers. They help each other out to sort of fight and win over the enemy.
I think we can take one more question. I see one in the center right here. Yeah.
I had a process question. I have the Parasite storyboard book on my wall, and I was wondering what did you storyboard this as much as you did Parasite? And if you did, do you also think about music and sound design while you're storyboarding or scripting? And how do you deal with the changes on set that happen, and how do you adapt to new things that happen while you're making the film compared to the storyboard?
In case of Parasite and also Memories of Murder, also the Mother kind of movie, I draw all of 100% of my storyboard by myself. But in case of 약간 비주얼 이펙트들이 많이 들어간 영화들 이거나 아니면 괴물 설국열차 같은 경우는 반씩 했어요. 제가 반 정도 그리고 또 전문 스토리보드 아티스트가 와서 나머지 절반 그리고 이런 식으로.
So with films like The Host and Snowpiercer that require a lot of VFX, I would do half of the storyboards and I would have a storyboard artist work on the other half.
그래서 사실 스토리보드 없이도 영화를 너무나 훌륭하게 찍는 감독님들이 많이 있는데 그래서 꼭 스토리보드를 해야 된다고 생각하지는 않는데 저도 근데 마음이 불안해서 좀 불안을 해소하려고 하는 경향이 있고요. 스토리보드 없이 세트장에 그러니까 현장에 나가면 되게 그 우리가 종종 꾸는 악몽이 있잖아요. 그러니까 바지를 입지 않은 채로 막 이렇게 센트럴 스테이션 한복판에 서 있는 것 같은 그런 느낌이 들거든요.
I know that a lot of great directors make amazing films without storyboarding. I don't think storyboarding is absolutely necessary to filmmaking. It's just that I feel very anxious without it, and storyboarding helps me relieve that anxiety. You know, for me, showing up on set without a storyboard is kind of like a frequent nightmare where if like you're standing in the middle of Central Station without wearing any pants.
근데 카메라의 위치, 프레임의 사이즈나 카메라의 움직임 뭐 이런 것들을 되게 정교하게 계획을 하고 그거대로 찍고요. 완성된 영화도 그거와 별 다르지 않은데 그 짜여진 프레임 안에서 배우들은 최대한 릴렉스하고 또 심지어 임프로바이즈 하라고 막 부추기고 그러는 배우 입장에서 좀 짜증 날 수도 있어요. 이거 그 되게 이렇게 꽉 자기를 조여놓고서는 또 편하게 하라고 막 뭐 긍정적인 걸 해보라고 막 이러니까 약간 모순되죠. 예, 그래서 힘들어하는 배우도 계시고. 근데 저는 그 느낌이 좋거든요. 예.
So I'm quite precise in planning out the camera placement, the movement, and the frame size. And I plan meticulously, and I shoot according to my storyboard. And the finished film is not that different. But I always want the actors to relax, and I even encourage them to improvise. And some get quite frustrated and annoyed because some feel that like I tie them up and I just tell them, okay, now do whatever you want and improvise. So it's kind of a paradox, and I know some actors have a hard time with it, but that's my process.
근데 이제 배우들은 좀 뭔가 컨트롤이 안 된 느낌 있잖아요. 이제 진짜 살아있는 날것 상태인 거를 좀 찍고 싶은 그런 이상한 욕심이 있어서 약간 모순되는 건데 이제 자꾸 그렇게 하려고 하죠.
And I don't want the actors to feel, controlled. I want them to feel like living, breathing creatures and, get these raw performances out of them. So it's a paradox what I'm asking of them. But yeah, this is a process that I enjoy.
근데 배우들이 되게 훌륭하기 때문에 그런 요구들을 다 받아주고 잘 해주는 것 같아요. 이게 사실 좀 고생스러운데.
And it's not an easy feat. I think it's because I work with great actors. They manage to say yes to my requests and still perform their best.
Well, I think that's a fine note to end on. Unfortunately, Director Bong has to be off, so please remain seated until he's out of the theater. But join me in thanking him. Thank you so much.